Hey Grandma, why don't you play matching game? I couldn't hide my surprise at the unexpected invitation. How many years has it been since I last played matching game? Back when my grandson Madeline was still a toddler, I played a few times. I wonder if she'd still be interested in playing now that she's in high school. Madeline looks at me with an anxious look on her face. When I accepted Madeline's invitation, Madeline's expression softened slightly. When they finished arranging the cards, Madeline picked them up. "Auntie, you can concentrate on taking it." I wonder if she took my age into account. And then the two-man matching game began. Madeline read the cards and engaged in a back and forth with the other player. When there were only 5 cards left to draw, Madeline stopped reading the cards. I wondered and looked at Madeline's face. Madeline had a serious look on her face as she began to straighten out the remaining 5. Then, one by one, she points her finger at the bills, as if to appeal to me for something. "It's sold." At first I didn't understand what it meant, but when I noticed that Madeline was looking alternately at cards and her mother, my blood boiled. "It's sold." A few days later, at 5 o'clock in the evening, I was dazzled by a number of sparkling signs. It was a place that Madeline had secretly told me about in an email. "I'm sorry, Mother, but it looks like I won't be able to go back there this year." I sigh as I receive a call from my son, Theodore. It's the 6th summer since Theodore and my grandson, Madeline, left this house. I don't know how long I haven't seen Madeline's face yet. We used to communicate by phone and email, but since the beginning of this year, that contact has been cut off. If you are busy, it can't be helped. Use a cheerful voice to show as little loneliness as possible. Theodore apologized to the end and hung up the phone apologetically. When I looked around, I felt that it was a normal house, but it was somewhat spacious. I feel like I'm going to block my feelings. Before that happened, I got up and started getting ready to go shopping. I'm Briella Kells, 65 years old. I lost my husband at an early age, and my only son, Theodore, lives far away with my family. Previously, I lived with my son's family. Theodore, my daughter-in-law, Galilea, and grandson, Madeline, live with 4 people. I have to say, the relationship between the wife and the mother-in-law has been smooth sailing, if I do say so myself. Galilea was a cheerful person who was always smiling and made me smile. We were so close that when we went shopping together, we were always mistaken for real parents and children. If it hadn't been for that unfortunate accident, the 4 of us would still be living together. It's so heartbreaking that Madeline, who was only 3 years old, was left behind. God can be so cruel, taking someone away so suddenly. After the loss of Galilea, our house became quiet, as if we had lost our light. But I can't let Madeline feel lonely. Theodore and I decided to push our loneliness away and make Madeline happy. A few years later, Theodore suddenly announced that he was going to remarry. He is in a relationship with a person he met at a business partner on the premise of marriage. It seems that the other woman is thinking about Madeline's thing, but what about Madeline's feelings? At that time, Madeline was 10 years old. She's old enough to understand that fathers remarry, and that mothers-to-be are not related by blood. I thought Madeline's feelings were my top priority, so I was willing to ask Theodore to give up on remarrying if Madeline objected. After expressing my feelings clearly, Theodore brought his new wife, Rayon, to the house. Like Galilea, she was also a cheerful person. Even when I meet Madeline and me for the first time, she doesn't hesitate to talk to me. Madeline, who is shy, was also put through the paces and seemed to be having a good conversation. After Raylan left, I asked Madeline for her honest thoughts. "If that person can be my mother, it would be fun for me," she said with a smile, and I felt lonely. However, I decided to agree to Theodore's remarriage in order to make Madeline happy. Just then, Theodore's transfer was decided and Theodore and the others had to move out of the house. On the day we were moving, Madeline told me, "Grandma, I'll make sure to contact you so that you don't feel lonely even if you're away." Madeline, who had been with me for a long time, seemed to know how lonely I was. But still, I couldn't burden my elementary school-aged grandson with worries. I forced a smile and bid Madeline farewell. The loneliness of living alone was more than I could have imagined, but I thought of Madeline and tried to avoid contact with her as much as possible. When I realizes that I won't be able to see Madeline or Theodore, my memories of the past come flooding back. It's a problem because when I soak in the memories, the loneliness comes up again. Putting a lid on the overflowing loneliness, I finished my shopping. On the way back, I met the eyes of a small kitten. Is it a stray cat? I thought that the mother cat would be nearby anyway, so I started walking without worrying, but the kitten meowed and followed me. You should go home as soon as possible, your mother will be waiting for you. I turned around and continued walking, calling out to it, but eventually it followed me to the front of the house. In the sweltering heat, the kitten looked up at me with dewy eyes. I couldn't escape its gaze. The days I spent alone changed thanks to a kitten that suddenly visited. Strangely, the cat doesn't run away, and it's relaxing as if it had been spending time together at home for a long time. By the time the summer was over and I could hear the insects, I couldn't get away from it. Looking at her adorable appearance, it reminds me of Madeline when she was little. And I was worried that there was no reply to the email I sent the other day. Until I was in high school, I used to exchange emails and phone calls with Madeline privately, but lately I have been getting more and more responses. When I entered high school, her life would have changed. I thought so, but I felt a kind of commotion. I tried to call Madeline directly, but the ringing only sounded in vain. Let's get in touch with Theodore. I thought so, but then I remembered what he said on the phone the other day, that he was going on a business trip overseas. I can't afford to worry unnecessarily about it, and I don't want to call the house where Madeline and the others live and make Raylan bother her. I wonder what I'm going to do. The kitten responds to the muttered soliloquy. A cat that was lying on a cushion by the window suddenly came to my feet and looked up at me. It is staring at me with the same sweltering eyes as the day it followed me home. As I stared into its eyes, as if I was pleading with it, I suddenly had an idea. Let's secretly go check on Madeline. The cat, sensing my idea, curled up on the cushion again. The city where Madeline and her friends live is about 2 hours away by train from the city where I live. Predicting the time when Madeline would come home from school, I took the train. My heart is pounding. What would I do if I got caught? Why don't I take the plunge and go see her normally? While thinking about this, I was looking at the scenery from the train window. Arriving at the nearest station, I checked the map. They know where the house Madeline and her friends live in, but I've never been there. I feel like a detective as I walk, checking my surroundings. Unfamiliar cityscapes and unusual behavior. Before I know it, I realize I'm having fun. Even though I was supposed to come to check on Madeline out of concern. With that in mind, I composed myself and eventually arrived at the house where Madeline lives. Walk past the house once and stop at the nearest bend. Having come this far, I suddenly feel anxious about not having a place to discreetly hide myself. There are few people on the street, but I can't go back and forth in front of the house many times. When I looked up at the sky to see what was going on, I heard a familiar voice. Hiding in a corner, I checked the direction from which the voice came, and the owner of the voice was Raylan. Hurry up, hurry up. It seems like Raylan is urging the girl walking with her to hurry up. The girl is walking after Raylan with her head down. The two of them walk down the path I walked. I wonder if they are heading to the station. Distancing, I decided to follow the two of them. I haven't seen Madeline in years. In my mind, she remains a grade schooler forever. But I was sure that the girl was Madeline. The posture of walking, the habit of hair, and the remnants of childhood can be seen in some places. Well, she's already a high school student. I knew it, but when I saw my grandson grow from a child, I began to feel it and how many years have passed. Looking at the two of them, it seems that Raylan is frolicking. Quite the opposite, Madeline showed no energy. It's almost 5 o'clock in the evening, so where are they going? Shopping. Their behavior seems too disjointed for that, causing me to feel uneasy. Eventually, the two entered the ticket gate of the station. I bought a ticket so as not to lose sight of them and headed to the platform. However, As I was going up the escalator, I heard the sound of a train arriving. When I hurriedly climbed the escalator, the train had just departed. I looked around, but I couldn't see the two of them. I've completely lost sight of it. Helpless, I decided to give up and go home. In the car on the way home, as if to shake off the fuzzy feeling, I am reminded of Madeline's growth many times. When I arrived home, I was exhausted from doing something I wasn't used to, so I went to sleep without eating. While I was sleeping, I had a dream. Madeline seems to be yelling something at me, but I can't hear her. I also try to talk to Madeline, but I can't get my voice out. I scream so hard that my throat is about to burst, but all that comes out is a hoarse voice that doesn't reach Madeline. Painful. When I wake up, my cat is looking anxiously into my face. I wonder if I was soaked. I was drenched in night sweats. After a quick change of clothes, I immediately sent an email to Madeline. I'm worried that I've lost contact with you since you became a high school student, so if you have any problems, please tell me at any time. Then, unexpectedly, I received a reply from Madeline quickly. Everyone is fine. I also want to see you, Grandma. I'll do my best. If she wants to see me, she can come and see me. Why can't you take that kind of time? Is it that busy to be a high school student? As I thought about it, I remembered Madeline's lifeless face that I saw yesterday. Accompanied by Raylan, Madeline goes out with a blank face. I can't get it out of my head, so I send an email to Madeline again. You can come and see me anytime, or are you busy with a part-time job or club activities? To make it easier to reply, make a question mark at the end. But Madeline never responded. Since then, I've been checking my phone every now and then. May Madeline's reply come at any time. However, the act was just in vain, and every day went on without change. I went to check on her in person several times, but maybe it was bad timing, and I couldn't even see Madeline. My heart is about to be crushed with excitement and worry. At that time, Theodore called me for the first time in a long time. Mom, are you doing okay? I finally finished up some work and managed to come back from overseas. Forgetting to ask Theodore, I desperately begged. Rather than that, you should definitely going to come back this year. Theodore seemed surprised by my momentum. What's the matter? Did something happen? I know that if I ask Theodore how Madeline is doing, he'll tell me she's okay. In the first place, it may be a mistake on my part to be upset about Madeline's appearance. But again, if I can't talk to Madeline directly, I won't be able to get rid of this fog in my chest. I haven't seen you in years and I'm getting lonely. Until now, I've suppressed my loneliness and tried not to show it to anyone. Also, I recently got a new roommate, and that loneliness was disguised, but I changed the tone of my voice to talk to it a little like acting. Mother. Theodore has always been an obedient child. Apparently he felt sorry for leaving his elderly mother alone, and promised to come home with him for the new year. After hanging up the phone, the cat comes to my feet and rubs against my body. With a slight sense of guilt in my heart, I stroked the cat's head. And then New Year's Eve came. I waited anxiously for Theodore and the others to return. The food and drinks are ready. In the evening, Theodore, Madeline and Raylan arrived at our house. Mother-in-law, I'm sorry. It's been a while since I've shown my face. Raylan handed me a New Year's gift of sweets. I'm sorry I said something selfish. It's not that I'm on bad terms with her. If I meet them, I will naturally have a lively conversation. When I saw Madeline's face as she walked in, I couldn't help but cry. At that time, I could only see it from a distance, but she had grown into a beautiful daughter. Seeing Madeline, who was still just 10 years old, grew up, was enough for me. Grandma, I'm sorry I can't reply by email. I almost hugged Madeline, who apologized for her bow down, but I held back. It's okay, I'm just glad to see you in good spirits like this. I pat Madeline on the back and urges her to enter the living room. Then, the moment my hand touched Madeline, her body reacted twitchingly. When I met her after a long time, I thought I might have been too familiar, but Madeline didn't seem to mind at all. Oh, there's a cat. Madeline, come on. Hearing Raylan's voice from the living room, Madeline walked hastily down the hallway. While Theodore and the others play with my housemate, the cat, I prepare tea. I never thought my mother would have a cat. Come to think of it, I remember how Theodore used to express his desire to have a pet, but I was always against it. While engaged in trivial conversation, I noticed that Madeline seemed to be whispering something to Raylan. Reluctantly, Raylan handed Madeline a cell phone from her bag. I'm going to the convenience store for a while. With that, Madeline grabbed her phone and walked outside. Even though you've come all the way back home, Raylan murmurs loudly for a soliloquy. Well, when she's in high school, it's boring to sit still in a country house, I replied, trying Raylan not to make a fuss, as I set the tea on the living room table. The three of us chatted for a while and then Madeline came back. Madeline, I'll hold on to your phone for now. Since we've come all this way to visit Grandma, let's take our time and have a chat. Even if you don't go that far, Madeline handed the phone to Raylan, without any resistance. At that moment she glanced at me, but when I smiled at her, she looked away. Theodore didn't think anything of the act itself, but he was smiling carefree as he watched the year-end TV special. However, it feels strange for a mother to keep her high school daughter's cell phone. Pretending to prepare dinner, I checked my phone. Then I received an email from Madeline. I couldn't reply to you, because she has control over my phone and don't have much free time. I glanced at Madeline and saw her idly next to Theodore and Raylan, who were laughing at TV. Her expression was scarce, and she was so unimpressive that I thought her soul had been taken out by a demon. What can I do for Madeline? It may be Raylan's education policy to manage phone, and I can't afford to interfere suddenly. I thought about it a lot, but I couldn't do anything about it, so I decided to start the new year. The next day, the new year had arrived, and Theodore and Raylan had been drinking since morning. The two of them seemed to be getting drunk over the dish I made. Meanwhile, Madeline approached me. Hey Grandma, why don't you play matching game? I couldn't hide my surprise at the unexpected invitation. How many years has it been matching game? I only did it a few times when Madeline was young. Is it something she wants to do even when she is in high school? Madeline looked at me with an anxious look on her face. Well, there's nothing to do, let's do it together. When I accepted Madeline's invitation, Madeline's expression softened slightly. I'm sure there was cards that I used to use in the past. We both laughed when we saw the playing cards that we had taken out of the closet. Nostalgic. When I finished arranging the cards, Madeline picked them up. Auntie, you can concentrate on taking it. I wonder if they took my age into account. Even so, can the two of them make up for matching games? With all these thoughts in mind, the two-person card tournament began. Madeline reads, and the two of us fight each other. When I try it, it's surprisingly fun. When there were only 5 cards left, Madeline stopped reading the cards. What's wrong? You still have some left, don't you? I wondered and looked at Madeline's face. Madeline had a serious look on her face as she began to straighten out the remaining 5. Then, one by one, she points her finger at the cards, as if to appeal to me for something. It's sold. At first I didn't understand what was happening, but when I noticed Madeline glancing between the cards and Raylan, my blood ran cold. It's sold. No way, Madeline. That shouldn't be the case. Such a thing is absolutely unacceptable. But Madeline's testimony alone is not enough to question Raylan. I whispered to Madeline. I'm sure I'll help you. It may take some time, but just wait. Madeline nodded firmly, tears welling up in her eyes. A few days later, I asked Theodore to take a leave of absence from work to lie to me. Theodore believed me and picked me up in a car. Let's go. Theodore follows me as I walk without getting in Theodore's car. What's the matter, Mother? Where are you going? Until we have solid evidence, it's best not to tell Theodore about the situation. It's not that I don't believe in my own son, but I guess Madeline sent me an SOS partly because she didn't want Theodore to worry. If today's surveillance goes well, it'll be quicker to explain the situation to Theodore afterward. However, the shock that Theodore will suffer will be immeasurable. However, I was more inclined to want her biological father, Theodore, to see the reality. Besides, if something happens, I can't compete alone. I'm going to help Madeline no matter what. As I walked with such a single-minded attitude, Theodore eventually followed me without saying a word. Hop on a train and reach the nearest station in the city, where Madeline and her friends live. We changed trains, and a few stops away, Theodore and I got off the train. At 5:00 in the evening, I was dazzled by a number of sparkling signs. It was a place that Madeline had secretly told me about in an email. What's the business of such a busy area? Theodore seems puzzled. However, I hide in the shadow of a building where I can see the ticket gates. Theodore quietly obeyed. Eventually, two familiar faces came out of the ticket gates. Raylan and Madeline. Theodore looks at Madeline with a slightly darker makeup and Raylan pulling her hand. I gave Theodore a glance and followed the two of them. Two people enter one of a number of multi-tenant buildings. I immediately entered the building. The elevator sign going up stopped on the 4th floor. When I checked the signboard, I saw that the name of the store was written in English. Why is she bringing Madeline to a bar like this? It seems that a distrust of Raylan has sprung up in Theodore. I'm going, Theodore. We got into the elevator and pressed the button on the 4th floor. Apparently the bar was a members-only bar, and I was stopped by a man at the entrance. Yes, I'm sorry. However, I pretended to be a blur and forcibly entered the store. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that my father went in here. I'll take him out right away. The man, who was troubled by the treatment of the blurred old woman, was horrified. I'm glad it wasn't a tough opponent. When I looked around the store, there was a stage in the back of the dimly lit store. Illuminated by spotlights, young girls are posing in racy outfits. The men in the audience were taking pictures of the figure. What is this store? Theodore tweets. We were stunned for a while. Hey customer, don't stand around like that. We'll be in trouble if you don't order for something. I was called out by the clerk and I was stunned. I'm sorry, it looks like my husband is coming here. No, it's really a little blurry. I'll leave soon. As we exchanged these words, the color of the lights and the music that was playing changed. I looked at the stage again, and this time I saw a familiar girl. I wonder how long it took for me to change her clothes. The girl, dressed in a nurse's uniform so short that her chest was open and her underwear was almost visible, was unmistakably Madeline. The men cheered. The camera flash is glaring. In the midst of all this, the face that endures earnestly is clearly an expression of disgust. Oh my God. My body trembled with anger. Theodore is gritting his teeth as well. But I can't suppress that feeling. Stretching my purposely bent hips, I stepped onto the stage. I grabbed Madeline's hand and walked out of the store. The guests were... When Madeline came back to my house, I made her hot milk with lots of honey. Before I know it, next to Madeline a cat is curled up. The warm milk and the warmth of the cat seemed to reassure Madeline. Thank you, Grandma. Madeline, who had been forcing a smile, eventually broke down in tears as if the floodgates had been opened. I hug her and pat her on the back. And so the night went on. A few days later, Theodore packed up himself and Madeline and moved into my house. Raylan, who seemed to be able to afford it at that time, was surprisingly reluctant to divorce. She called me many times and told me that she was just trying to make some extra money, and that she was going to change her mind and that she would ask me to forgive her, but she never apologized to Madeline. Most likely she's being deceived by the owner of that store. Neither I nor Theodore had anything to do with it. Eventually, through a lawyer who knew Theodore, the divorce between the two was finalized. Apparently, Raylan was not only Madeline but other girls were also arranged at that store. It seems that not only us but also other children and their parents are being tried for extortion of high school students to do work that is not appropriate for them. That's all I heard from my lawyer. I'm more concerned about Madeline's heartbreak. As the months have passed since that day, Madeline's expression has become richer. But is she okay? One evening, Madeline came home from school and brought out a matching game. Just like then, she says she wants to play cards. I wonder if there is something to be conveyed to us. Madeline reads the tag, and the two of them fight for the card. 6 cards were left behind. Madeline fools around and lines up the cards. Follow the cards in turn with your eyes. I am okay. I couldn't help but look at Madeline's face, and there was the same smile as when she was a child. A single tear runs down my cheek. The cat, who was watching us next to us, played with the cards left behind. Madeline and I were surprised, but we laughed at the cat's gestures. Since then, every time something happens, we've played a game of words with cards. An adult cat was watching over us from a distance.